So we're going to continue looking at the effects page here. We're going to look at the effects chain. Okay, so the effects chain located at the top here is where we have our motion and audio effects, and they're organized into 8 different slots. We can combine these in different ways. And as we click on each one of these slots, you see we have the ability to fine tune the parameters for that effect. Now, the first slot is always going to be one of our motion effects. I'm going to come on to those. The second slot is always going to be a lo-fi effect. And then from then on, we can have different audio effects loaded in. There's 15 we can choose from. We can choose them from here. Now, when we have one of our effects selected like so, if you come across here, you can choose from presets for that effect. So located in the top left-hand corner, and we can move through these using the arrows here as well, like so. Now, in order to change the position, all we need to do is come onto these little lines here, and we can move our effects around, position them exactly the way that we want. We can also switch the effects on and off by using this little power button here. Now, we know that to change the effect, we can do so using this little drop-down menu here. We can choose exactly what we want. Now, we have the ability to actually modulate these parameters. We can do that by using the modulation routing system here, which we're going to come on to. But when I do that, you'll see we get this little eraser icon that appears. This allows you to reset all that modulation essentially. So anytime you're modulating one of the effects parameters, you can reset it by clicking on clear effects modulation like so. Okay, so that's an overview of the effects chain and the nuts and bolts of how it works. Okay, so let's have a look at the motion effects now. So we have 3 motion effects: arp, strum, and grain. And these are designed to add rhythm and articulation to your sound. So they're basically kind of like MIDI effects that process the MIDI, and they alter the notes to allow you to have more kind of rhythm, expression, and excitement. First one we're going to look at is the ARP setting, which stands for arpeggiator. And this is a classic arpeggiator that is applied to the notes generated in the chord sets. So when you press a single key to play the chord, the arpeggiator will play a sequence of the notes within that chord, and it will play back obviously using the corresponding samples. This sequence is going to be played back for as long as you hold down the key. So here we've just got a basic kind of initialized arpeggiator setting. So let's have a look at the parameters here. So let's play a chord. So if I switch that off, you can hear the difference. So that's just one chord being held. With the arpeggiator on, we're creating a sequence of those notes. Okay, so let's have a look at the parameters here. So first of all, we have the pattern selector. So we have a nice visual indicator of what's going on here. And these are the kind of patterns that we can create. So we had up, where it's going to be ascending in pitch. We can go down, we can go up and then down. We can go down and then up. We can zigzag up. We can zigzag down. We have the ability to zigzag up and down and up, which is obviously just a repeat of those two. And we have this move in. Just a different pattern, and then move out. So we get quite a big interval jump there on those two. So let's put it back to up, and then we have a speed control here, and this is going to adjust the rate of the arpeggiation. We can hear that at work there. Now this is synced to the project tempo, but it doesn't have to be. We switch that off. Now we're working in hertz. I'll put it back on to sync with the project tempo. Okay, now we have a length, which is going to be like a gate time. So it's the length of the notes being sequenced. Now this is going to be affected by other effects coming after. So let's actually switch these off. So you can hear it's a little bit tied to that. That's obviously going to be affected by the type of sample that's being generated as well, possibly the envelope time. So now we can hear that much more snappy when we have the length of time set quite short. We can then swing this. So we get that trademark shuffle. Come on, click to reset any of these parameters. We can adjust the range that it's going to move through. So if we wanted it to go up 1 octave, or within 1 octave, we can do so, but we can also make that more extreme. So it could go up 2 octaves. even 3 octaves, or you could go down the other way. Pretty cool. And then we have the final parameter here, which is strike. This adjusts the number of consecutive repetitions of each note in the sequence. So you can hear that at work there. Let's combine that with the octave control. Let's bring the effects back in as well. Just see what this does. Because at the moment it sounds a little bit machine gunny, but maybe with the effects. So it helps blend it a little bit. So you can hear that strike parameter at work. It's basically creating almost like a bouncing ball kind of a style effect on the string. And that's the ARP. So let's have a look at the next setting. I'm actually just going to switch these off again so we can really hone in on what's going on here. And we'll flip this onto the next option, which is strum. Now, strum is another arpeggiator, but it's a special arpeggiator, which again is applied to the notes in the chord set. So when you press a single note to play a chord, strum is going to play a sequence of the notes and their corresponding samples in the same way as the arpeggiator did. But unlike an arpeggiator, the sequence is only going to play once after pressing a key, which is going to be like strumming a string instrument. So this is a little bit like the way that you play a guitar, because you can't actually hit the notes simultaneously with the plectrum. So you get that slight delay to each one of the notes in turn. And you can kind of recreate that using the strum effect. Let's actually just delete all the routings here. Again, we have the same options here. So now you can hear we're not looping round and round. We have different shapes here that we can follow. It's a bit like an up and down stroke on a guitar. So that's quite a good one if you want to recreate that kind of strum sound. Now, the parameters here are the same as it was for the arpeggiator. Speed is going to be the rate of that arpeggiation. Length is going to be that gate time. Swing is going to swing it. An octave is going to be moving through the octaves. Really nice. Okay, and then finally, we have the grain option here. Again, let's reset these routings. Now, grain is like a specialized MIDI effect, which is going to really change the way that chords are going to be played. It's inspired by granular synthesis, and it generates a huge number of MIDI events to trigger the notes and samples in exciting ways. So essentially, the MIDI events are going to turn the sound into very small kind of snippets. These are called grains. That's kind of granular synthesis terminology. And then you can alter the playback of these grains in terms of the speed, size, and various different parameters. And as a result, you can create some really nice kind of wide-ranging rhythmic and textural effects. So let's have a look at this. So you can hear it's playing back those grains there. First of all, we have a speed parameter, which is going to adjust the rate at which the grains are generated. So we can set this, as usual, in hertz or beats and bars. We can then adjust the start point of the grains. Just kind of like we're moving through the sample, deciding whether it's going to be this right at the start point that's going to be triggered, or maybe a little bit further into the sample. And we can also adjust the size of the grains. Now you can hear that when we adjust some of these parameters, like the start point, we get some very nice textural changes occurring. So again, if we just bring in some reverb here. We get some very interesting kind of results, textural kind of sounds. Okay, so that was the size of the grain. Then we have the shape, which is going to adjust the contour of the crossfade between grains. So going from left to right, we're going to be more percussive in the left. And then more crossfaded and more textural as we go to the right. Now, using the random controls here, we can actually introduce some randomization here, which is going to be interesting. So first of all, we can apply a randomization to the start point. So we take that off. It's very uniform sounding. And now we can randomize the start point of the grains. And we get a kind of a smoother effect. It doesn't sound as kind of mechanical. Okay, then we can randomize the velocity, which is going to apply randomization to note velocity or the level of each one of the grains. Then same for the pan position. Now this is going to be affected by the kind of sound you're working with in the first place. Now finally, what we can do is work on the pitch, so we can adjust the probability for grains to be played back at different pitches. So this is going to increase pitch variation. Really, really nice. And then we have an octave control. This is going to adjust the probability for grains to be played back in different octaves. So it's going to increase the amount of octave variation by turning this to the right. Really cool. So you could definitely make some very interesting sounds by using that effect. So let's compare. So that's what we had originally. So just to create kind of variation within an arrangement, for example, if you're using that core sound for your chords in more of a traditional way, then you might want for the breakdown something a little bit more kind of textual sounding. You could experiment with the grain control to be able to introduce that. And of course, we can modulate any of these as well. And we'll have a look at that when we come onto the modulators. Okay, so that's it for this video. We had a look at the effects chain here. So remember, the slot 1 is going to be motion effects, slot 2, the lo-fi effects. And then we have our audio effects here. We can switch them on and off as we've been doing. We can choose which effect we want to have in which slot. And we can reorder them as well by coming on to here and dragging on these little lines. This area below allows us to change the parameters relating to each one of the effects. Now we have presets for each one of the effects located here. And if we have modulation routing set up, we can reset them using this little eraser that appears. Then we came on to have a look at the motion effects. And remember, we had 3. We had ARP, strum, and grain. ARP is a traditional arpeggiator with different patterns here: speed, length, swing, octave, and strike we went through. And then we have a strum, which is the same, but we have no looping. So it's just basically going to happen once, like a strumming, a string instrument, especially a guitar traditionally. And grain is a MIDI granular effect, which is very interesting. So we separate out the samples, or separate out the MIDI into tiny grains or snippets of MIDI, which are then going to trigger the samples. And we can set speed, start, size, and shape. And then we can randomize start velocity and pan, and also change the kind of increase the pitch variation and the octave variation as well. Really powerful stuff. Okay, so now we've had a look at the motion effects. In the next video, we'll have a look at the lo-fi. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.